There is a moment subtle, almost invisible, where everything begins to change. Nothing dramatic happens. No argument, no clear rejection, no obvious shift that you can point to and say, "That's it. That's where it went wrong." Instead, it's quieter than that. She replies a little later than usual. Her tone feels different. The warmth you once felt now comes in fragments, inconsistent, unpredictable, and suddenly you feel it, a tension, a question, a quiet discomfort creeping into your mind. What changed? This is where most men make their first mistake. They assume something external has gone wrong, that there is a problem to fix, a mistake to correct, a strategy to apply. But what if the situation was never about fixing anything? What if this moment was designed to observe you? Not consciously, not like a calculated move in a chess game, but something far deeper, something instinctive. Because attraction does not only grow in moments of connection, it is tested in moments of uncertainty. And this is where emotional control becomes everything. You see, when certainty disappears, your true nature is revealed. Anyone can appear confident when everything is going well. Anyone can seem composed when attention is freely given. Anyone can feel secure when there is no risk of loss. But remove that certainty and the mask begins to slip. The invisible test begins the moment you feel that shift. And more importantly, the moment you react to it. Your mind starts searching for answers. You replay conversations. You analyze her words. You look for hidden meanings in simple actions. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to lose control, not externally at first, internally. Your thoughts become restless. Your emotions become reactive. Your sense of stability begins to depend on her behavior. And this internal shift always leads to external action. You send a message you didn't need to send. You try to revive the energy that once flowed naturally. You lean forward just a little more than before, and that is enough, because the test is not measuring your words. It is measuring your state. Are you grounded, or are you shaken? Are you in control, or are you seeking control? Most men believe attraction is built through effort. More attention, more communication, more presence. But effort, when driven by calm intention, is very different from effort driven by emotional instability. And she can feel the difference, not logically, not consciously, but instinctively, because emotional control is not something you say. It is something you radiate. When you are in control of yourself, your actions are measured. Your responses are deliberate. Your presence feels steady, unshaken by external changes. But when you lose that control, even slightly, everything changes. Your messages carry urgency. Your tone carries need. Your behavior carries a quiet desperation that cannot be hidden, no matter how carefully you choose your words. And this is why the test is so powerful, because it does not require her to do anything significant. She simply pulls back just enough and watches what happens next, not with intention but with awareness. Because at a deeper level, she is asking one question: is this man ruled by his emotions, or does he command them? Most men answer this question without realizing it. They react immediately. They try to close the gap. They try to restore certainty. They try to regain the feeling they had before. But in doing so, they reveal something critical, that their emotional state is dependent on her behavior. And dependence is the beginning of imbalance. Once that imbalance is felt, attraction begins to shift, not instantly, not dramatically, but subtly. Respect starts to weaken. Interest starts to fluctuate. And the dynamic begins to change in ways that are difficult to reverse. All because of a moment that seemed so small. This is why emotional control is not just important, it is everything. Because the invisible test does not announce itself. It does not give you time to prepare. It appears suddenly, disguised as a change in behavior, a shift in energy, a moment of uncertainty. And in that moment, You are not judged by what you intend to do. You are judged by what you cannot control. Your reaction, the man who understands this does not panic when uncertainty appears. He notices it, but he does not become consumed by it. He allows space without rushing to fill it. He allows silence without trying to break it. He allows distance without trying to chase it. Not because he is playing a game, but because his emotional state is not dictated by external validation. He remains the same, whether attention is given or withdrawn. And this consistency is what separates control from chaos. Because the invisible test was never about her silence. It was about your reaction to it. And most men never realized they were being tested at all. There is a brutal truth most men never confront, not because it is hidden, but because it is uncomfortable. Your value is not measured when everything is going right. It is revealed the moment things begin to go wrong. You see, in the early stages when attention flows easily, when conversations feel effortless, when her energy mirrors yours, it is easy to believe you are in control. You feel confident, you feel desired, you feel certain. But certainty is a luxury, and luxury hides truth. Because anyone can appear high value when there is no pressure. Anyone can seem calm when nothing is at risk. Anyone can appear attractive when they are being validated. But remove that validation, even slightly, and something far more honest begins to surface. Your reaction. This is where the illusion ends. Because the moment uncertainty enters the dynamic, your response becomes your identity. Not what you say you are, not what you believe you are, but what you demonstrate in real time. She doesn't need to ask who you are. She watches how you react. A delayed reply, a cancelled plan, a shift in tone, small disruptions but powerful enough to create tension. And in that tension you are exposed. Most men think value is something you prove through action, by doing more, by showing more, by giving more, but this belief is flawed. Because when your actions are driven by a need to restore control, they stop being attractive. They become revealing. You send another message not because you want to, but because you feel you need to. You try to keep the conversation alive, not out of confidence, but out of fear that it might die. You attempt to fix something that may not even be broken. And in doing so, you communicate something far more powerful than your words. You communicate dependence. And dependence quietly erodes value. This is the paradox most men fail to understand. The more you try to secure her interest through reaction, the more you demonstrate that her interest controls you. And once that dynamic is felt, everything changes. Because value is not determined by how much you invest. It is determined by how stable you remain when the return becomes uncertain. Think about it. When you feel the need to act immediately, to correct, to pursue, to reassure, what are you really saying? You are saying that her behavior has the power to disturb your internal state. That her silence creates your anxiety. That her distance creates your urgency. That her inconsistency creates your instability. And this is where value collapses. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly beneath the surface. Because true value is not loud. It is not performative. It does not chase recognition. It is felt through restraint, through the ability to remain grounded, even when the situation invites you to lose control. This is why reaction is everything, because reaction cannot be faked. You can rehearse words, you can plan actions, you can even mimic confidence for a short period of time. But your reaction in a moment of uncertainty is instinctive. It bypasses logic. It reveals your emotional discipline or your lack of it, and she feels it instantly. Not through analysis, but through perception. A man who reacts impulsively feels different from a man who responds with control. One feels unstable, seeking balance. The other feels stable, creating it. And that difference defines value. Most men never see this. They believe they are losing her because they didn't do enough. So they do more. More messages, more effort, more attempts to reconnect. But the more they do, the more they expose the very thing that lowers their value. Emotional dependence, because you is not about doing more. It is about needing less reassurance, less control, less immediate validation. The man who understands this does not rush to react. He observes. He allows space to exist without trying to dominate it. He does not interpret every change as a threat, because his identity is not tied to her behavior, and that is what makes him different. His reaction is not driven by fear. It is driven by choice. He can act, but he is not compelled to. He can engage, but he is not dependent on the outcome. And this freedom is what creates presence, because when a man is not controlled by the situation, he becomes the most stable element within it. And stability is rare. It stands out. It commands attention without asking for it. While others react, he remains composed. While others chase clarity, he remains certain within himself, and that certainty becomes his value. Because in a world where most people are governed by emotion, the one who governs himself becomes undeniable. Understand this clearly. She is not measuring how much you care. She is measuring how much you lose control when things become uncertain. And most men fail not because they lack interest, but because they lack restraint. They reveal too much, too quickly. They allow temporary situations to dictate permanent impressions, all through reaction. And once that reaction defines you, it becomes very difficult to change the perception that follows. There is a moment, subtle, almost invisible, where interest turns into pursuit. And pursuit, when misunderstood, becomes a trap. At first, everything feels natural. The conversation flows. The energy is mutual. You invest and she responds. There is balance, but then something shifts, not dramatically. Not enough to clearly alarm you, just enough to create a slight imbalance. She becomes a little less available. Her responses lose a bit of their enthusiasm. The rhythm you once shared begins to break. And in that moment, most men make a decision without realizing it. They lean in, just a little more at first. They send an extra message. They try to revive the spark. They increase their effort, believing this is how attraction is maintained. It feels logical. If something is fading, you give more to bring it back. If connection weakens, you strengthen it through action. But this is where the trap is set, because attraction does not operate on logic. It operates on perception. And the moment you begin to over-pursue, your perception begins to change. Not in your eyes, in hers. You believe you are showing interest. But what she begins to feel is imbalance. Because when one person increases effort, while the other pulls back, a silent message is created. That you are trying to hold on to something that is slipping. And trying too hard is never neutral. It always communicates something deeper. The more you pursue, the more you reveal that you are affected by the shift. That you noticed it. That it unsettled you. That it pushed you into action. And action driven by discomfort is never powerful. It is reactive. This is the mistake most men make. They believe attraction is maintained by constant effort. So when they sense distance, they increase their presence, more texts, more attention, more attempts to reconnect. But what they fail to see is that attraction thrives in balance, and balance cannot exist when one side is compensating for the other. The more you give in response to her pulling back, the more you create an uneven dynamic. You begin to chase, and chasing changes everything, because the moment you chase, you place yourself in a position of pursuit, and pursuit implies that something is out of reach, that something must be won, regained, or secured. And in doing so, you unconsciously place her above you, not intentionally, but perceptually. You begin to revolve around her behavior. If she responds, you feel relief. If she delays, you feel tension. If she engages, You feel validated. And just like that, your emotional state is no longer your own. It is tied to her actions. This is the true danger of overpursuit. It is not just about doing too much. It is about losing your center. Because once you begin reacting to every shift, you stop leading your own behavior. You follow hers, and the one who follows cannot hold power. This is what most men never realize. They think they are losing her because they are not doing enough, when in reality they are losing her because they are doing too much for the wrong reasons. Effort is not the problem. Misplaced effort is. Effort driven by clarity is attractive. Effort driven by insecurity is not, and she can feel the difference. Because overpursuit has a certain energy. It feels rushed. It feels forced. It feels like an attempt to control an outcome that is no longer naturally flowing. And control, when it is obvious, becomes uncomfortable. She begins to feel the pressure, not directly, not in a way she can always explain, but in a way that shifts her perception. Because attraction is not built through pressure, it is built through space, space to choose, space to feel, space to come closer on her own terms. But when you overpursue, you remove that space. You fill every gap. You answer every silence. You chase every moment of distance. And in doing so, you suffocate the very dynamic you are trying to preserve. This is why the trap is so effective, because it feels like the right move. Doing more feels productive. It feels proactive. It feels like you are taking control, but in reality you are reacting. And reaction is never control. The man who understands this does something different. When he feels the shift, he does not rush to correct it. He notices it, but he does not allow it to dictate his behavior. He does not increase his effort to compensate for her decrease. He maintains his pace, his energy, his focus, his direction, not because he is playing a strategy, but because he is grounded in himself. He does not chase what pulls away. He allows it to either return or continue leaving. And this is where true power lies. Not in forcing connection, but in allowing it to reveal its true nature. Because if it requires constant pursuit to exist, it was never stable to begin with. And overpursuit only delays the inevitable. It creates an illusion of connection while slowly eroding attraction beneath the surface. Most men never see this happening. They believe their effort is keeping things alive. But what they are really doing is prolonging something that is already fading. And in the process, they lose themselves. They invest more. They think more. They care more, while receiving less. And this imbalance becomes their new reality, all because they fell into the trap. The belief that chasing harder will bring her closer, when in truth it only pushes her further away.